Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Um, as always, we're very excited to have Elizabeth and Zia here with us. So, they come here usually every term, every fall and winter term. So, and a lot of students tend to get a really solid information about their immigration journey. So, feel free to ask questions as well. There's a Q&A chat on the bottom there as well. And I won't take too long in introducing Elizabeth Long and Zia, and I'll give it to you. Elizabeth, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Hussam. It's always great to be here talking with you guys. So, what do you need to know about immigration law as an international student? Like Hussam says, every semester when I come in, I talk to you guys, and a lot of the things are repeated, but every time I do, something new has usually cropped up, especially during this time when COVID has interfered with so many things about travel and restrictions. Immigration has been affected a great deal. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the temporary stuff, what you need to understand before permanent residence. And then we're also going to go into then the different permanent residence programs that may apply to you. All right, so what do you need to know about permanent residence or before we apply for permanent residence? There's a few concepts that I like to speak with you. And the first one is called implied status. This is one of the most important things you need to know in order to maintain your status in Canada as a temporary resident. If you hold a study permit, a work permit, a visitor record, you are a temporary resident. So let's say my study permit expires on, let's say April the 30th. Okay, or let's say it expires on March 31st. Okay, but my study program is going to go on until April 30th. So I need to extend my study permit. Now, if I file the extension before March 31st, the IRCC website says 30 days. That's a recommendation. That's not the law. The law is as long as you file it before it expires. So let's say I file on March 30th, and it takes maybe a month for the study permit to be issued. Well, I have the legal right to remain in Canada and continue to study. That's called implied status until a decision is made. Okay. Now, what happens if I forgot to file the extension before it expires? What happens if I look at my study permit and, oh shoot, on April 1st, I realize, oh no, it expired. What happens then? Well, I can file a restoration of status. So you normally have 90 days. For COVID, they've extended that time to be August 31st. You have to file it by May 31st, but or if you've lost your status, you can file it after January 30th. You can file it by August 31st. Okay, but I can file the restoration. But while I'm waiting for it, let's say I file it on April 1st. While I'm waiting for it, I actually don't have student status and I can't study. So that might mean that I would lose that entire semester because I forgot to file it in time. Okay, so one of the first things that you need to know is make sure that you look at the expiry date on your study permit or your work permit, and you make sure that you try to file it before it expires. If you file it before, if I filed it on April 31st, even the day that it expires, I can have implied status and I can continue to study until a decision is made. If I forget, just a few hours later, on April 1st, I don't have to leave the country. I can file a restoration of status, but I won't be able to study until a decision is made. Okay. The other concept that you need to think about is the difference between high-skilled and low-skilled work experience. So the government of Canada, they have sort of classified all of the different occupations into 5 different classifications called the knock codes. Okay. And O, A, and B are high skilled, and C and D are low skilled. So, it's very important when you are going to take a job or even to understand the work that you've done before. If you're interested in applying for permanent residence, whether the work that you've done or you will do is considered high skilled or low skilled. Because when we talk about permanent residence, you will see that for the most part, high skilled work experience will help you get permanent residence, whereas low skilled work experience, unless they're very, very specific, will not be of any help for you to get permanent residence. So what's high skilled? What's low skilled? Okay, let's play a little game here. I'm going to say an occupation and you tell me if it's high skilled or low skilled. Well, you can't tell me, but you think out loud. You think in your head, okay, whether it's high skilled or low skilled. Okay, let's say office situation. A receptionist, that's low skilled. Secretary, that's high skilled. Data entry clerk, that's low skilled. An administrative officer, well, that's high skilled. A medical assistant, that's high skilled. A dental assistant, that's low skilled. An accountant, high skilled. A bookkeeper, high skilled. Accounting clerk, low skilled. Okay, as you can probably see, you might have gotten 1 or 2 wrong, and a lot of people would have gotten a few of these wrong because it's not altogether clear all the time whether the government classifies an occupation as high skilled or low skilled. But it is very important for you to check before you take a job whether or not it's considered high skilled or low skilled. Okay. All right, I want to go over a few recent rules regarding studying. Now, what I tell you today is true today, but these rules could very well change, in the next short while. In fact, these rules have changed since my last presentation, which is only a few months ago for Mohawk. So what we will do is we will put you guys who have registered for the webinar on our newsletter list, where we send out some important news that may affect you moving forward, okay? But because there's, the changes are so much, the only way we might be able to let you know about some future news is through those newsletters. Okay, so first of all, if you guys are currently outside of Canada, okay, and you have applied for your study permit, whether or not you receive it or not, you can start studying online for the spring and fall 2021 semesters and still have those studies count towards your postgrad work permit. But your study permit has to be approved eventually for it to count towards your postgrad work permit. So Mohawk College is approved as a COVID-ready DLI. So that means that once you have your study permit approved, you can then look to travel to Canada with your study permit. And once you want to travel to Canada, first you'll have to undertake the COVID test within 72 hours of your flight. And when you come in, there are quarantine provisions, including staying at a government hotel until the COVID test that you take when you come in is approved. And you'll also have to quarantine for 14 days as well. Okay. All right. So let's talk about studying and working while you are on your study permit and you're a student. So first of all, you have to understand that irrespective of when your study permit expires, you will lose your student status if you stop actively pursuing your studies in 90 days. Okay, so what does that mean? You have to be registered as a student. It could be full-time, it could be part-time, although I generally recommend that you do not go part-time because you may be ineligible for post-grad work permit at the end if you are, okay? But you, if you are not registered as a student, you stop studying, other than for the fact that, you know, it's scheduled break, right? Summer breaks, winter break, or whatever it is on the school calendar. Or if you have a personal situation and the school grants you authorized leave. So what authorized leave means is, let's say you have a personal situation, you are sick, or you need to go and take care of a family member, or, you know, something to do with your finances. You can apply to the school and see if they'll give you authorized leave. You can get it up to 150 days, so it's good for 1 semester. And during that time that you have authorized leave, you won't lose your student status. However, you cannot work at all, whether full-time or part-time, while you are on authorized leave. And it's only up to 150 days. Working while you are studying. Now, you can work while you are a full-time student only without a work permit, okay? Except in the last semester, the IRCC, they understand that sometimes you might not be able to fit in all of your courses, you know, before, and you may have 1 or 2 classes left over that you have to do. So if it's in the last semester only, you can go part-time and you can work full-time, okay? Now, once you've completed your studies, once you get that first indication from the school that you have met all the requirements in your program, at that point, you're no longer a student. So you have to stop working at that point. You can't just work based on your study permit, even though it's still valid, okay? Because you're no longer a full-time student. The only time you could work is if you are in between programs. So let's say you finished a 1-year program and then you want to do another 1-year program. So let's say I finish it in April and I want to start a new program in September. If you have been accepted to the new program in September and the new program starts within 150 days of the old program ending, then you can work in between full-time. All right, let's talk about the post-grad work permit. Now, a lot of times people come to me and ask me, Elizabeth, how should I apply for the post-grad work permit? My response is often, I don't necessarily know that's the right first question you should ask me. The first question you should be asking is, should you apply? for a postgrad work permit. The postgrad work permit is a golden ticket. And you only get one golden ticket in your lifetime. Why is it a golden ticket? Well, it's because A, it's easy to get. You just graduate and you can qualify for it. And it's open work permit. You can work for anyone you like. It does not require you to have a job offer from an employer. Okay? But you only get it once in your lifetime. Now, during COVID, they have allowed students to extend it for 18 months if you apply within 4 months of the work permit expiring by July 27th. Okay, but this is a special COVID provision. Normally, you are not able to extend your postgrad work permit. So this means, and people often say, well, how can I extend my work permit after my postgrad work permit expires? My answer is, it's not how, it's whether you can. Because for the most part, most people may not be able to extend the work permit afterwards. You have to qualify for a work permit. And to qualify for another work permit can be very difficult. Most of the time, the employer, to qualify for another work permit, the employer has to go through a LMIA where they have to advertise and try to recruit Canadians and show they can't find a Canadian for the job. Most jobs that you guys will undertake, it's very difficult to show that. And most employers will not want to apply. And even if they do apply, the application may be rejected. Okay. So normally what we do is we try to plan to make sure that you will get the work experience and that you need for permanent residence while you're on your postgrad. And the length of your postgrad is really dependent on the length of your program. If it's between 8 to 12 months, you get that length of the program. If it's 2 years or more, you get 3-year work permit, right? You can also combine your program. So if you do a 1-year program and then you do another 1-year program within, and you finish that second one within 2 years of graduating from the first one, then you can qualify for a 3-year work permit as well. Especially during COVID now, when it's quite difficult sometimes to find a job that you need to get, 1 year may not be enough. Okay, because oftentimes we're looking at least a 1-year work experience in Canada to qualify for a lot of certain kinds of permanent residence. Okay. All right. The second thing that I need to speak with you guys about is this concept of full-time studies. Postgrad work permits, the officers who evaluate postgrad work permits are very, very strict about the fact that a student needs to have studied full-time during the studies in order to qualify for the postgrad work permit. There are 2 exceptions. One is if you're on an authorized leave, and secondly, if it's during your final semester. Okay. If your classes are canceled because of COVID, they will consider that, but you have to make sure you have evidence that your classes are canceled because of COVID. Sometimes for other reasons, the officers may consider it, but it is something that is up to the officer to decide. Okay. So sometimes I have people coming to me and say, Elizabeth, this semester, I'm suffering from some depression or other situations, and I don't think I can do a full course load. I'm just going to go do a part-time course load. Okay. So that will help me with my grades. My response is, don't do that. Ask the school to give you authorized leave to take the entire semester off. It's much better for you to get that and take the entire semester off than for you to go part-time. If you do part-time, you probably won't qualify for a postgrad work permit. If you do authorized leave and take the whole semester off and then come back fresh this following semester, you could qualify for the postgrad work permit at the end. Okay. When should you apply for the postgrad? Now, this is very important to understand, okay? If you're past the timelines, you will not get a second chance to apply. So the rule that I tell you guys to remember is apply within 90 days of when you first receive notice that your postgrad work, that you've completed your program, or if your study permit expires before then it's your study permit. Okay. Now, some of you might say, hey, Elizabeth, I went on the IRCC website and it says that you have 180 days to apply for the postgrad work permit. Why are you telling us 90 days? The reason why I'm telling you guys 90 days is because in order to qualify for a postgrad work permit, you have to have valid student status. So you lose your student status after 90 days of not studying, okay? If you were to just apply for a postgrad work permit, let's say 170 days, without doing a restoration of status or extending your study permit, then your work permit will likely be rejected. So my rule for you guys is to try to apply for your postgrad work permit within the earliest of 90 days, or if your study permit expires before then the deadline is when your study permit expires. Okay. If you do so, then you can start working while you are waiting for your postgrad work permit. You don't have to have the postgrad work permit in hand. As long as you apply within these conditions, you can start working while waiting for the work permit. And during COVID times, do not go to the border. You know, sometimes you talk to your friends and your friends might say, hey, it was so easy. I just drove to Niagara, and went to the border and got my work permit right there. Okay. First of all, don't listen to your friends. This immigration is probably one of the most important things that you will do. And it's not something that you should go by, what your friends have done, because immigration, first of all, it's different for everybody, and circumstances and laws change. Right now, during COVID, you are not able to go to the border. They will turn you back if you went to the border to apply for the postgrad work permit. You must apply online. And sometimes online, it would take a few months to get the work permit. That's why apply for your postgrad work permit on time, and you can start working while waiting for the postgrad work permit. All right. Let's start talking about permanent residence. The first one I'd like to talk to you guys about, a lot of you probably already heard about it. It's called Express Entry. And here's how it works. You have to first create an online profile. You qualify to make the profile through one of 3 different categories: Federal Skilled Worker class, Canadian Experience class, or the Federal Skilled Trades class. And once you create a profile, you will get into the pool, okay? Now, a lot of people say to me, Elizabeth, I've already applied for permanent residence. I say, okay, great. So when did you receive the invitation to apply? Oh, I haven't yet. I just put myself into the pool. So that is something that I say, actually, you haven't applied yet, okay? Once you just put yourself into the pool, you haven't applied for permanent residence yet. You're just a candidate for permanent residence. Once you get into the pool, you will get a series of points assigned to you called the CRS score. And it's going to be based on points based on your background and whether or not you have provincial nominee program. Every 2 weeks or so, the government has a draw where they announce a number. And right now, they're also announcing the category sometimes for people who they are inviting to apply. If you belong to the right category and your number is above the number that they have announced, then you will get an invitation to apply, and then you can actually apply. Okay, so let's talk about how to get into the pool first. The first category is called the Federal Skilled Worker class. Now, many of you may already be able to enter the pool through this category. In order to qualify, you have to have work experience. It could be from any country that is high skilled, full-time, at least 30 hours a week for at least 1 year, that is continuous and in one occupation. Okay, so I have a lot of people who qualify under this category who have never come to Canada. I also have a lot of students, for example, I have a lot of master's students or PhD students who do their TARA, and they gain the work experience while they are studying. And that is okay. They can also qualify for this. Okay, this work experience is very different from the Canadian experience class. So once you have the work experience, you have to score a certain level for language. We look at the rest of your background. You have to meet a minimum 67. This is a federal skilled worker point score, not the express entry score, okay? You also have to have financial savings, approximately 13,000 Canadian for one person, a little bit more for each additional family member. The second category that people can qualify for is the Canadian experience class. Now, this is something that has drawn a lot of attention in the past few weeks because just a few weekends ago, the Canadian government had a draw where they invited everyone who qualified under the Canadian experience class. The score, normally it's at the 470s. The score that they invited was the person only had 75 points. And because they qualified under the Canadian experience class, they were invited to apply. Okay? So what qualifies you under the Canadian experience class? Well, the work experience for this one is very different from the work experience for the federal skilled worker class. You need 1 year in the last 3 years of application of high skilled work experience in Canada that is gained while you are not a full-time student and you are employed, okay? And it has to be at least 1,560 hours, which is equal to an average of 30 hours per week for 52 weeks. It does not have to be in the same occupation. It does not have to be related to your area of study, okay? But you have to be employed. You cannot be working as a contractor. Now, let me explain what the difference between a contractor is compared to someone who's working on a contract. Most people will get an employment contract, okay? That has nothing to do with whether or not you're a contractor or not. Some people will have a contracted date when they are hired for example, 1-year contract, 2-year contract. That also does not mean that you are a contractor. What a contractor means is that you are self-employed. Take for example, I am going to hire someone to paint my office. And the person comes in and I ask them, how much is it to paint my office? Oh, it costs $1,000. Fine. I'm going to give them $1,000 after the job is done. I don't take any income tax from it. I don't pay any CPP or EI because they're not my employee. Compared to, let's say, my assistant, I am giving them a salary that where before the paycheck is given to them, we need to take out income tax, we need to take out CPP and EI. Okay, at the end of it, you should get a T4 at the very end. That is the difference between being self-employed and being employed, and you cannot use self-employment. Also, don't be smart and just incorporate yourself and then hire yourself. Okay, if you own a significant part of the business, then that will be deemed to be self-employment work as well. All right, so you need that work experience. You need to pass the language exam. The language exam, depending on the level, if it's NOC O and A, you need to have a CLB level of 7, which for IELTS is 6 for each category, reading, writing, and listening. And for category B, NOC Bs, you're looking at a CLB of 5s. Okay, but just because you can get into the pool, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can get out. So the language points to get out may be a lot higher than just to get into the pool. The third one is the skilled trades. Now, I don't usually talk too much about this. I understand some people might be in the trades. This is more of the construction trades, cooks and chefs. In order to qualify for this, you'll need to have a LMIA or the provincial certification. Okay. Okay, so let's say that you are in the pool, express entry pool. Okay, so I have, say, 4 people here. Now, the last draw, let's say the last draw was, well, the last draw was 75 for Canadian experience class. Who can get out? Was it everybody can get out? No, that's not the case. Okay, it depends on, because it was for Canadian experience class only. So it depends on who actually qualified under Canadian experience class. If Anna was the only person who qualified under Canadian experience class and everybody else qualified, for example, under this federal skilled worker class, then only Anna is going to get an invitation to apply. So when people ask me, should I put myself into the pool? What do you think the numbers are going to be? I, first of all, can only be an educated guess, right? I did not predict that the government is going to invite everybody in the pool under Canadian experience class, because that was the first time they did that since express entry ever opened, right? If you're looking at trends, before that draw, we were looking at around the 470s for everybody. Sometimes they just invite everyone to go through, and the skilled worker class is the one that is mainly affected by that one. For Canadian experience class, we've been advising our clients to just put yourself into the pool, because you never know. Maybe the government has another draw. Also, since so many people were invited to apply, there might be less people in the pool who qualified under Canadian experience class, and therefore you might have a better chance of getting through with a lower score in the next little while. Okay. All right, so how do you get the score for the CRS system? First of all, age. Age is a huge defining factor. When it comes to your 30th birthday, after that, it's no longer a happy birthday. Every year in your 30s, it goes down by 5 or 6 points. In your 40s is a fast slide, 10, 11 points. By the time you get to your 45th birthday, the good thing is it doesn't go down anymore. But the bad thing is it's a 0 points for your age. Comparing that to someone who is in their 20s who gets 100, 110 points, that puts someone who is a little bit older at a significant disadvantage. Education is also important. So if you have 2 degrees, one of them that is at least 3 years or more, you have a significant benefit because your points would jump. Okay. Language is also very important. If you don't have Canadian experience, what we are looking for is at least scores of 7s in reading, writing, and speaking, and 8 in listening for IELTS, or 9 in every category for CELPIP. Relevant Canadian work experience. This is the work experience that is the same as the one that I described for the Canadian experience class. Okay, high skilled, gain it after when you're not a full-time student, you have to be employed, etc. Okay. Foreign work experience, if you have high skilled work experience outside of Canada, we can also count that. Spouse can also be important. Their education, language, Canadian work experience. And by the way, a spouse in Canada is not just someone that you are married to. A spouse in Canada also includes someone you are in a common law relationship with. What does common law mean? It means that you have lived together with that person in a conjugal relationship, so not roommates, okay? Girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. And you have lived there for at least 1 year together. Now, it doesn't matter whether you recognize it as common law or not. It is common law when you have lived together for 1 year. And so when you are applying for permanent residence or your work permit or your study permit, you have to declare that other person as part of your family. If you do not, it's a misrepresentation, and that can affect not only their application, if you say you wanted to sponsor them afterwards, you won't be able to if you didn't declare them when you file your permanent residence application. It will also affect your own status because they could come after you and take away your status if you gain it and you did not declare your marital status properly. Okay? All right. So, provincial nominee programs, we're going to get into it in the next slide, but just wanted you guys to understand that when we're talking about provincial nominee programs in the context of express entry, it's not every provincial nominee program that will give you 600 points. It has to be an express entry provincial nominee program that if you get approved for that, then you will get 600 points for. Previous study in Canada, so if you studied at Mohawk for 1 or 2 years, you get 15 points. If it's 3 years, you get 30 points. Arranged employment. A lot of people, they say, well, I have a job offer, therefore I should get 50 points for arranged employment, right? No. You can only get arranged employment if you have an employer-specific work permit or LMIA. A post-grad work permit will not allow you to get arranged employment. If you have siblings who are Canadians or permanent residents in Canada, you get 15 points. And if you have fluent French ability, you will get a whole lot of points, okay? That's very important. Now, people often say, well, I can learn French. How much French do I need to know? I say, do you know any French? No, I don't know now, but I can learn. My advice to you is to concentrate on other things because the French that we are looking for is at a fluency that is going to be at the level of a 6 in your IELTS, okay? So unless you have a very, very talented background in being able to acquire languages, you may want to look at other avenues rather than say, okay, I can learn French. Trade certification, that has to do with the construction trades and cooks and chefs, not the just any sort of certification. All right, so I want to talk about the OINP express entry streams first of all. What OINP is, it's a provincial nominee program. What are provincial nominee programs? Well, immigration is federal jurisdiction, and the federal government is responsible for all immigration. But the federal government has also made an agreement with every province to allow each province to nominate people that they want to get permanent residence. And those are called provincial nominee programs. OINP is Ontario's provincial nominee program. And they have several different categories. There is a specific category that they call, that is the express entry linked. So it's only these ones that if you go through it, you first have to be in the pool for express entry. And if you get approved, then you will get 600 points. Okay, so how does it work? First, like I said, you have to be in the pool, and you cannot apply directly for this. You have to be in the pool, and you have to wait and see if you can get an expression of interest. It's kind of like, you know, the dating site Bumble, you know, where, so the Bumble, as I've heard, I have never tried it before, but as I've heard, essentially the guys can't contact the women directly, right? So what happens is the women, they see the men that are in the pool and they see who they're interested in, then they contact them. It's only after the women contact the men that the men can then communicate with the woman. Similar to this, let's say the OINP is the woman and you're the guy, okay? You can't just go and contact the OINP and say, I want to apply to you. OINP has to see you first in the pool, and then they have to say, hey, we're interested in you. We give you an expression of interest. You can then apply to them. So who are they interested in? The first category is the human capital stream. And this is the one that is the most ubiquitous. It's the one that we don't really know, and they won't tell you, okay? What they have done in the past is, first of all, they have said, we like people in the tech field. So there are certain occupations that if you belong to the tech field and your points are at a certain level, that when they have a draw, they'll likely invite you to apply. They have also offered it to other occupations. They don't announce what these occupations are beforehand, but they have done this for other occupations. At one time, they invited people with job offers, okay? To qualify for this, you have to have a bachelor's degree. You don't have to have it in Canada. It could be from anywhere. The second one is the skilled trades. These are people who have 1 year of work experience in one of the specified trades in Ontario in the past 2 years. So if you have that, and your express entry score is a little bit lower, you might have a chance, if you're in the pool, for them to invite you to apply for 600 more points, and then you can get express entry. French speakers, again, okay? If you are fluent in French and you have a bachelor's degree or more, you could be there and they could invite you to apply for 600 more points as well when they do their draw. Okay, so what if you don't have any chance with that and your express entry is, you know, quite low and you don't have work experience? You know, what if that whole scheme that I had talked to you about does not work for you? What can you do? So now I'm going to talk about some other ways, not express entry, okay, that you could qualify for. The first one is the employer-based OINP. Again, it's another form of provincial nominee program. To qualify for this, you have to first have a job offer from a qualified employer. If your employer is inside the GTA, the gross income has to be of at least $1 million, have 5 full-time Canadian or permanent resident employees, and be in business for 3 years. If it's outside of the GTA, so Hamilton is included as being outside of the GTA, then the gross income of the employer only has to be $500,000 in the last fiscal year, They have to have 3 full-time Canadian or permanent resident employees and be in business for 3 years. The job offer has to be full-time, at least 30 hours a week, and it has to be a permanent job offer. Can't be on contract like 1 or 2 years. It has to be permanent. From there, we have 3 more categories that are divided, okay? The first one is the international student class, and this would apply to you if you have graduated from a 2-year program or a 1-year postgraduate program that only, and the prerequisite for the postgraduate program has to be that everybody has to have had a degree. There can't be any substitutes. So it can't be a degree or diploma or degree and work experience. Everybody has to have only a degree, okay? If you've graduated from that program and you apply within 2 years of your graduation, then as long as your job offer is high skilled and your salary meets entry wage, you can apply. So they don't at this point ask for age or language points or anything. You can just apply. The second one is for people who don't meet the first one where they've graduated from an eligible program. But if they have 2 years of work experience in that occupation that they have been offered the job in the last 5 years, and the job is high skilled and it meets the median level wage for salary, so the salary has to be a little bit higher than the first one, then they can also apply. And the third one is the in demand. So the in demand one is the only one that I've talked about so far where you can have a low skilled position, but it's not just any low skilled positions. The job has to be on a certain list. So we're looking at things like truck drivers, factory workers, some of the laborers in construction work, farm workers, etc. Okay, and if you have 9 months of work experience in Ontario in this occupation, and you have the wage as median wage, then you could also apply. Now, these categories have been extremely popular in the past few years, and because of this, the government, they only have a little quota from the federal government as to how much they can invite people to apply. These programs, especially international student and skilled worker, have been opening and closing super fast, like in a few minutes. And when we're trying to get people in, even in that short period of time, it's like buying tickets on the hottest tickets on Ticketmaster. You may not be able to get people in because the system is quite glutted. So the government has said, well, to make it more fair, they're going to put in place an EOI system where they're going to, everybody who applies, you're going to go into a pool. And then they're going to invite those people who have the highest points to apply for this. So it's going to be a little bit like express entry, but the points may be a different criteria. We don't know yet what this criteria is going to be. So we will send out an email through our newsletter to you guys once we know. Okay. All right. I just wanted to have another chat about another program. Again, not express entry, and this one is for people who are entrepreneurs. So there is a program called a startup visa, where up to 5 founders can come together. So you don't have to have 5 people, you can have 1 person, but you can have, if you have other friends, you can all come together and you can apply for the permanent residence. And if you're going to, this is for people who are going to start a business in Canada, and every person has an active management role. And your business in Canada is an innovative business that receives support from a designated organization like an incubator, an angel investor group, or venture capital group. So if this is something that you guys, are inclined to do, let me know, and I can walk you through some of the more intricate details of this situation. Finally, I also like to talk to you guys about the caregiver program. This is another low-skilled permanent residence application, but it's quite interesting. So especially for those people who are, interested in working as a early child care educator, or who are working in the PSW field, um, if you were to work in someone's home, and your employers will have to be that family, it can't be like an organization, okay? But you're working to take care of someone in their home who is a child, an elderly person, or disabled person, and you work there for 2 years, then you can apply for your permanent residence. Okay, you just have to meet the language benchmark of 5, which most of you should already have 1 year of your studies, so you will, graduate from 1 year program. All of you should have that, and that's it. Okay, so that's another good program as well. All right, so I've talked a lot today. I've talked a lot about different programs, and what I wanted to do is kind of give you some practical advice on what should you do next. First of all, you need to have a plan for yourself. What I've told you is some general information about the system. It doesn't necessarily, it doesn't, it may pertain, some of it may pertain to you, some of it won't, and there's other things that you have to consider, okay? You have to have a plan for your own self. We do offer consultations where we go through these plans with you, and if you want to book a consultation with us, let me know you've attended this webinar so we can give you a discount, okay? Once you have a plan, then you have to methodically plan to get there, okay? Sometimes people say, well, I'll come to you when I graduate, right? Then I might qualify, or I'll come to you after I have the 1 year of work experience. Then I'll have a plan. But I wouldn't say that's the best time to do it. When should you plan? As early as possible. Once you come to me and you have a plan, then you know what you need to do to get there. And a lot of things can be, study for your exams. Don't go into it cold. Even if English is your only language, and you probably think, well, I know how to speak English, that's fine. But the exams often test your ability to do the exams, not your ability in language. And these exams are hours long, and they have specific things that they're looking for. And so even if English is your only language, it is usually advisable to go and do a practice exam just to see what you're getting yourself into. The programs that you need to do, maybe you need to do 2 programs instead of just 1, because your work permit needs to be longer. All of these things, I'm not saying that you have to do it. I'm just saying that some people have to do it. I don't know if you have to do it or not. Some people don't need to do it, okay? Goes back to the plan. Afterwards, you have to carry out the plan. The third thing is to make sure that you guys stay in status and don't misrepresent. Some of the most unfortunate cases I see is when somebody had gotten some bad advice about trying to take the easy route. Somebody had said, oh, I don't need to tell this to immigration, right? I don't need to tell people that I had work experience before when I applied for my study permit. I don't need to tell people I have a common law, girlfriend. Don't worry about it, right? Or I can have a fake job, and I can get a letter saying I have a fake job, right? Misrepresentation carries with it and you can be barred from Canada for 5 years. You can lose your status if you've gained it. Let's say you've gained your permanent residence or your citizenship, and you didn't declare your family members like you're supposed to. You can have that stripped away from you. Okay, and so you really may not sleep well for the rest of your life, right? And if you don't stay in status, that's another thing. Once you are out of status, it's oftentimes very difficult to bring someone back into status and get the work permits, get the study permits, get the permanent residence that you need. So make sure you have a plan, do what you need to get there, and make sure you don't go the wrong paths. Finally, if your application is rejected, you must contact a lawyer right away. There is a very strict timeline for you to file a judicial review with the federal court. That is 15 days to give notice, okay? If the decision is made in Canada, outside of Canada is 60 days. If you don't file the notice within that time period, then even if the officer made a mistake, you would lose your ability to go to the court. Now, also, people often think, oh, call centers are great, right? Let's say you buy something on Amazon and something's wrong, you call the call center and they can fix it. Well, IRCC also has a call center. So if they make a wrong decision, why don't I call the call center and they can fix it? Well, IRCC is not like Amazon. The call center is not you can call the call center 3 times and it can probably give you 3 different kinds of advice. And IRCC is not going to be kind to you or consider you when you follow the wrong advice that you get from the call center, okay? Because mistake of law is not an excuse. When you call the call center, if you get a bad decision, they will likely say, okay, go and write a letter. Go and explain yourself, okay? Now, you say, okay, fine, I will go and write a letter, explain myself. But likely you probably won't know what to explain. And if you go and submit a letter and then you try to explain yourself and they deny it, and then you come to me and say, Elizabeth, now fix this. I will say to you, well, I can no longer go and file what's called a reconsideration because you only get one kick at the can. And when you write a letter there, you've already been counted as filing a reconsideration. So even if there's very, very good reason for this application to be overturned because of the reconsideration, because you've already done something and they've rejected it, they won't even look at my reconsideration application. There's also other considerations. You could be out of status. The timing is very important, right? If you're out of time to file your postgrad work permit, for example, you have to redo another study program. All of these kind of very unfortunate things could be avoided if you seek help right away. Seeking help in immigration law is nothing to be ashamed of. It's something that is smart, okay? Go and seek help. All right, so this is our information. If you do want to contact us for a consultation to go over your situation, like I said, let us know you come from Mohawk, so we will give you a discount as well. All right, so Zia, do we have some questions from this?
Yes, we've got some great questions. So first, Elizabeth, can you go over when a student can work at the end of their semester, when they need to stop working, and when they can resume working?
Okay, so let's look at the timeline. I am going to study and I'm doing my final exams. At that point, I'm still a full-time student, so I can work part-time. When I receive the grades from the school and it shows that I have completed my program, at that point, I have to stop working because I'm no longer a full-time student. Now, I can if my study permit is still valid, I can apply while my study permit is still valid within 90 days of me graduating for my post-grad work permit. Even if I don't have the post-grad work permit in my hand, as long as I've submitted the application, I can work at that point full-time. If I don't want to apply for the post-grad work permit because I've been accepted to a second program, and that second program is going to start within 150 days, then as long as I've been accepted into the second program, I can work in between those programs.
Okay, perfect. And for the post-grad work permit, can we apply from outside of Canada?
You can apply from outside of Canada. Now, my advice to a lot of people, it may not pertain to everyone, but my advice to a lot of people at this time is try not to leave the country until you have your work permit, you have a job offer. Try not to leave, period, right now, okay? Because right now there are COVID restrictions and border restrictions that could affect your situation. For example, who knows how long the post-grad work permits are going to take to process outside of Canada. Sometimes these work permits are taking months and months to process. You will, if you're outside of the country, you may be required to do biometrics, and a lot of the biometric centers are closed. Once you have your work permit, you have to show coming back that you actually either live in Canada or have a job offer. And so if you have been outside of the country for a long time, the officer could say, well, I don't think you live here anymore and you don't have a job offer, so that even if you have a work permit approval, you may not be able to come back in, okay? Right now during COVID, it's very, very different from other times. My general advice, of course, different people have different circumstances, is don't leave the country.
Perfect. Now, if I have a spouse who has the open spousal work permit, and I'm now moving on to the post-grad work permit, how does that affect them?
So your spouse's work permit is good until it's expired, okay? It's not invalid when you stop studying. That's the first thing. Second thing is, in order for your spouse to extend their open work permit, you have to have a high-skilled job offer in order for her to be able to get the open work permit. So, and extend her open work permit. So getting that job offer is very important for you.
Does it need to be a full-time position?
It does not necessarily need to be a full-time. It's really the skill, a high-skilled job. And normally they do want to see that you're working in that job. It's not just a job offer, that you are working in that job.
Okay, so when I'm applying for my post-grad work permit, if I'm not working there at the time, can I include my spouse in my application?
You can apply, but I would follow it up afterwards with the pay stubs, because the required documents is that they want to see the pay stubs. And if you don't have it right away, you can always submit the application, but make sure you follow it up once you receive the pay stubs.
Perfect. And then going back to the eligibility criteria for the postgrad work permit, if I failed a course or a couple courses during my program, does that disqualify me from applying for the postgrad?
It's a good question. It's a consideration that the officer will consider. If you're a full-time student, if you fail the program but you continue, like you were full-time, it's an arguable defense that you were still a full-time student, you still qualified. But a lot of these things, if you went part-time at some point, you should be hiring a lawyer to explain your situation, because it's when the officer has discretion. And when an officer has discretion, they have a lot of power to reject it. And so for you to you have to convince the officer that you should get the postgrad work permit. It's not a black or white situation.
Perfect. And then when you were talking about when we can apply for this postgrad work permit, you said that this timeline starts after the individuals received written confirmation. What qualifies as written confirmation?
Anything that has an indication. So we normally like the letter or transcript from the school to apply for the postgrad work permit. But the timeline starts, the first indication, let's say you get a notice by email or on your portal. And it doesn't matter that you don't check your emails or you don't check the portal. As soon as it appears, that's the first indication. And so your timeline starts running from that day forward.
Perfect. Moving over to permanent residence, when you were looking at the express entry points, you talked about a certificate of qualification for points. Is that just any certificate, or is there specific certificates that people need to get?
So what I'm talking about for that one is for the skilled trades. That one is something where you have to get it in Ontario. You're getting it from the Ontario College of Trades, and it's for certain construction trades. And it's not that easy to get. I actually know very few people who are able to get through that. Normally they look at apprenticeship or work experience in the trades, but it's really very specific to construction mainly.
Perfect. And then with Canadian Experience Class, for example, you talked about needing 1 year of high skilled work experience in Canada that's obtained while they're not a student. Now I know I guess the full time is considered 30 hours a week. If I'm working 60 hours a week, can I finish my year in 6 months?
No, don't get smart. You need to have at least 365 days. Well, you can go on vacation. Okay, if you're still employed, you get your vacation, that's fine. But you have to be employed for an entire year. And then, you have to have at least the requisite number of hours during that year. It could be more, but, at least the requisite number of hours. Now, if you were doing part-time work, let's say 15 hours a week, you could add up your hours together over the span of 2 years, for example, and have that count. Okay, so but at least the minimum is at least 1,560 hours that you accumulated during at least 1 year of work experience, 1 year of work experience while you were employed.
Perfect. And then you've mentioned many different options, right? So you talked about express entry, you talked about the provincial nominee programs. Are we able to look at both at the same time?
Yes, you can apply for both provincial nomination and express entry. You will only get one PR at the end, but normally you can, whichever comes first, you can use that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zia. All right, that's it for us today. Thank you so much, Hassan, for inviting us.
I was just going to thank you. I mean, this is fantastic. I think one of the really good things about these presentations is the way you break down this information and how easy it is to understand for our students. And that's the kind of feedback that we've been getting from our students. So thank you again for joining us. As always, it's been very informative. I really advise all the students to take advantage of Elizabeth's discount, just because, as an immigration lawyer, it's going to be helpful just with your journey to PR. So thank you again. I really appreciate Elizabeth and Zia for joining us today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys all for attending and your wonderful questions. Good luck to you all. Stay safe, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Take care.